Absolutely. Okay, let's start with what questions you have.
I'm in the beginning stages. Uh, we have my partner. He works full time, so that's why we requested to record it. But we have already applied for a Fed ID or EIN number and a DUN number.
Okay.
And Angela tried to find our DUN number on the system, but I believe Isaac, my partner, put it on private. I talked to him over the weekend, and he said he didn't think so, but he was researching it, and from far as he knows, it's not private. And to that extent of what private means, I'm not too sure.
Well, the thing about SAM is that if you opt out of the public search, you won't show up in SAM publicly. The problem is people opt out of the public search because once you're registered in the system, it's like anything. As soon as you come up in the system, you're going to get some phone calls and emails from people trying to sell you stuff. And some people will opt out of the public search so they don't show up, so they don't get those phone calls. But what they don't know is, even if they opt out of the public search, they still show up in another system called BINCS, which is the Defense Logistics Agency's database. So regardless of opting out or not, their information is still public. And all they're doing when they opt out is making it more difficult for purchasing agents to hire them.
Okay.
But I wouldn't sweat it. I mean, if you guys, when you guys decide to work with us, we're going to fix that for you anyway.
Right. We discussed that. Me and Isaac and discussed that, and we said, yeah, we'll go ahead and fix it where
like I said, don't even worry about fixing it. We'll do it for you.
Okay.
Yep. Part of our service is to go in and do your registrations for you, make sure they're done properly and you're compliant, and fix any issues or errors like that.
Okay. I guess my next question is, how do we now kick off our business?
So this is a startup company?
Yes, sir. We just started it recently. We try to do it on our own, and it's just a mass of information out there. And I said, you know what? Well, let's find somebody who knows what they're doing before we really hurt ourselves. John?
Right. Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
As far as startup company, you're not going to be able to do an 8A as a startup company, so we can go ahead and take that out of our vocabulary.
Right, exactly.
Have you guys checked to see if you're in a hub zone?
No, but I doubt that we are. I listened to some of your YouTube videos, and I try to do it on my own, and it appears that we're not nowhere near one of those zones, a hub zone.
Okay. Fortunately, a lot of these systems, if you attempted to do them and you were declined, we couldn't do it for you for an entire year. So fortunately, you didn't go ahead and process it and get declined, because then I wouldn't be able to do it for you right away. But let's just double check real quick, make sure you're not in a hub zone. Hub zone's important because less than 1/10, 1 out of 100 people are in a hub zone. And not all of those guys are actually hub zone certified to take advantage of it.
Okay. Provided anything to put one of those pieces of equipment together, he purchased. I did the same thing, but I did offshore as well. So I purchased from restaurant equipment to the subsea components. So, we have a lot of product knowledge when it comes to that kind of field, from food to tools to operate. So, we have a lot of product between us. We have a lot of product. I bought parts for helicopters, helicopter pads. When you have to fly those men on offshore, and even boats. So
you have the ability to sell more, multiple products and services. That's awesome. Okay, awesome.
Yes.
I get some people that are real limited. I got a guy in Houston, said he only wanted to do landscaping contracts downtown. And, I'm like, oh, there are landscaping contracts downtown, but you're limiting yourself. He's not willing to travel to Austin. He said he had a cousin that had a janitorial service. I said, well, would you take on janitorial contracts and sub them out? No, I don't want to do that. Like, will you travel to Cyprus? No, I want to stay downtown. He's just being too limited. I mean, he can still do government contracts, but the number of contracts there is just he's limiting himself too much.
Right. And I didn't want to do that. Me and Isaac have a lot of knowledge, so I didn't. I just said, let's reach out and do what we know, what we can get and provide.
Right. One of the guys the other day, I was just talking. Actually, it was on the training the other day. There was a guy saying that his good friend of his rented some tractors or some backhoes or something like that. It was like 80 backhoes that they needed to rent for a couple of months. And after he completed the contract, he sold the business and retired.
But good for him. Good for
I know,
him.
right? Sounds good to me. This one was awarded yesterday for $55,000. Click the view link, and we'll see that this is a single obligation, so it's $55,377. Looks like it was a 1-year contract, 8/7 to 7/30, and it was for house demolition and remodel. Done as a simplified acquisition, small business set aside. There was, see how many offers received?
Okay.
Only 3 offers received. Now, I used to broker back in the 80s. I used to work for a company, and we brokered hard drives and computer memory and stuff like that when that was the hot thing,
Right.
When we brokered contracts back then, a lot of times we had 15 to 20 bidders we were competing against. Our profit margins were usually 5% at the most, and that was good. We were happy with that. In this system, there's rarely more than 3 offers, and the average markup that I work with my clients on is 15 to 20% minimum.
Oh, okay.
Well, if you're going to do it, you might as well make money at it,
Right, exactly. That's a pretty good markup. What the purchasing agent, will that shot make him kind of leery of awarding it?
If what?
If they saw like a 15 to 20% markup, that's pretty good.
Most of the time, they don't know what the markup is.
Well, good.
Yeah, and the weird part is, too, like on GSA contracts, a lot of times they'll show you inside the opportunity. They'll show you 10 different places they bought that product in the last year and how much they paid and what the quantities were. So you kind of have an idea of what they paid in the past or what they're willing to pay. The problem is the pricing's all over the board. Usually the larger the quantity, the lower the cost. The better rate you'll give them, because the larger the quantity, the better rate you get. But in a lot of these situations, I'll see where they bought one for $150, but they bought 100 of them for $800 a piece. So it's like all over the board. And if it's done through FedBid or FedConnect, you're going to know as soon as you submit your bid whether or not your bid's the lowest bid, because FedBid and FedConnect are reverse auctions, reverse bid systems. So you go in and bid, $500 each, and your bid's accepted. That means no one else has bid lower than that. Now, that's on FedBid and FedConnect. If it's a small business set-aside, it's rarely about how much. It's about who can get it, if you're a small business, and who has the best solution. So in some cases, you might be able to get a Caterpillar engine, and your competitor can get the same engine, but you can get it locally, and they can't, or you can get it with upgrades at no charge, and they can't. So your solution is going to be more important than your price.
Okay.
You'll see that on small business set-asides. It says it right in FBO that your technical proposal, your solution is the most important factor. Your past performance or your experience is second, and your prices last. So you don't have to be the cheapest on small business set-asides.
Okay, understood. That sounds so familiar to what we do already.
This one's for propeller blades. All they bought was right and left propeller blades for $40,000.
Right, and I purchased those before for drill ships.
There's only 2 offers received. See that?
Wow. And what was the now the $40,000 is what the bid was entered for, or is that what the max?
It was awarded for $39,354.
Okay, that was a quote sent to the purchaser.
Yep, and that's the one that won. This company, Wildcat Propellers, won it.
Wow. Those are huge propellers, by the way. I don't know if you ever seen them up close.
I bet.
It's funny that sometimes I'll get a request to purchase for Snicker bars, a case of Snicker bars, and then the next one is a rover for a subsea.
That's funny. And you know what's weird? Snicker bars and stuff like that overseas, it's crazy. They like in Bombay and Trivandrum, India, we're working with contractors over there, and they'll trade a box of Snickers for pretty much anything. And the people think that Snickers is like Gordovos. Yeah, they're really expensive chocolates when it's like our dollars and stuff, you know. This one was funny. Fuel pumps, also done as a simplified acquisition, small business set aside, only 2 offers received.
Oh.
That was for $27,000. So you've got micro purchases, and then you've got contracts over $25,000 as well.
Okay. And that's what we were kind of like we were both in the same line of thinking, let's start small and then work our way up as we get better at it.
I always suggest people grow respectively. Don't grow too fast or take on more than you can handle.
Right.
Doing a good job obviously is important. It's your score. It's your word on the line. It's your name on the line. But some of these contracts that they award, I mean, it's just mind-boggling how they're awarded, especially when there's only 1 offer received. This guy right here, this contract was for engineering services. This guy only did $1 million in revenues the year before. You see that?
Yes, sir. I'm looking at it.
With 13 employees, service-disabled veteran. The government gave him a $1 billion contract with a B. Overnight, he went from $1 million company to $1 billion company, and they prepaid $750,000 up front, which is enough to cover the bid bond. And it looks like they'll pay him $3.1 million monthly over the next 5 years. Now, as you guys, I'm sure there's a point where the capital that you have will be enough to cover the contract. And, a lot of people are scared to take on contracts that they don't have the capital to fulfill. The thing about federal government contracts is that there are companies out there that'll finance federal government contracts all day long. No questions asked. They can put in a surety bond on it. They're guaranteed to be paid.
Okay.
So as long as the contract's big enough, it's got to be big enough that they'll make enough money on it to be worth your while. So we're talking, at least $250,000. But if you go that route, they'll finance any contract that the federal government awards. All they need to do is see an award letter from you, and they'll finance it. Any contracts under $250,000 that they won't touch, there's other companies that'll do invoice factoring. So they'll factor your invoices for you as well.
Okay. All right. Are there any smaller contracts that are like prepaid? I remember hearing one of your videos talk about prepaids.
Some simplified acquisitions they'll prepay. Some they don't. Like that one I just showed you for $1 billion, they gave them $750,000 up front.
Right.
And they'll probably invoice them monthly. Some of them they prepay a deposit or half or even the entire amount, and some they don't. But there's financing available either way.
Now, when you say financing, would that be a service that you would provide, or is that something me and Isaac would have to do on our own?
I can refer you to the companies that do it. I mean, we provide financing in-house for our clients, but that's for services. If you needed financing on a contract, I would refer you to a handful of people that do that, and you just work with them directly. If you need invoice factoring, I'd refer you to a handful of people that do that, and you work with them directly. If you need a workman's comp or bonding or anything like that, in addition to the contract, same thing. I'd refer you to people that handle it, and you just work with them directly.
Okay, that sounds good. Now, John, can we bid for a contract out of state? Just say like for Louisiana or New Mexico or neighboring states, or are we're going to be limited to Texas?
That's the neat thing about the federal government compared to all other government. On state contracts, no, you would have to be licensed in that state. And if it's construction or a service like that, you're going to have permits and licenses within the state for that specifically. With the federal government, there's a different rule because basically it boils down to this. If FEMA ever needed you in another state, there's not going to be electricity in that state, or there's not going to be an office open in that state in order to get licensed there. So fortunately with the federal government, most contracts you're allowed to bid on in other states with your local state license. And that's way different than the state or local government.
Okay, that sounds really good.
Now here's just as an example, here's a simplified acquisition for an air conditioner, a 9-ton BTU. Look at how many offers received. Only one. And that happens a lot. This contract for $1 billion, there's only one offer received on it. Right here. One offer received.
Mm-hmm.
And you know as well as I do, when, this guy didn't sit down and do the math and come up with a quote for $1 billion even.
Right.
He basically, the government said, we want to buy this. How much will it cost? And he's like, I don't know, $1 billion. And they're like, okay, you're hired.
I love those type of purchasers.
All right, so this is what you guys are looking at. My client success ratio is almost 90%. I take great pride in that. It's because of the amount of time I invest with my clients and the amount of time I give them. Some of those videos that you've watched where you hear people talking in the background or you hear multiple people, those are my daily trainings where every day my clients can reach out to me and go through bids, solicitations, proposals together. I make sure, regardless of what happens, I'm always available at least 1 hour every day to do the group session. We have been doing it from 4 to 5. We're trying something new this week where each day we're moving it back 1 hour to accommodate more people. And we might wind up switching that over next week to try something different. Instead of doing 1 hour a day, to do 2 half-hour sessions a day, just to make sure we're more accommodating to more people. But you're going to have access to me every day regardless in the group session, and anytime you have a question or you got a bid that's due in an hour or something like that, you can email me or you can get with one of my assistants, Angela or Gina, and they'll get you on my schedule, and I'm going to give you some one-on-one private training as well. So if you guys have something you need to work on that we can't work on in the group session, maybe it requires some type of clearance, we can't discuss that in the group, or you guys, you got something that's due in an hour and you don't have time to wait for the group session. You guys will have personal one-on-one where you can get on my calendar. We'll log in like we're doing right now and go through these proposals, solicitations, and bids together. And that's why my client success ratio is almost 90%. It's because I make myself available to them and I teach them everything I know. Fortunately for you guys, you're in a good area. You're not limiting yourself to one product or service, so the likelihood of you guys winning contracts is huge. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Now, you said he's working full time and you're part time, or what type of time do you guys have?
I'm unemployed right now. We got laid off. He was able to find work right away, and I'm still looking, but I'm thinking about doing this full time.
Okay, so investing an hour or 2 hours a day on bids and making phone calls is not a big deal.
Okay, I was thinking about more half a day, but that's good.
You know, you got a couple hours a day to run the business, but actually physically sitting. I'm going to give you the names and phone numbers and emails of the purchasing agents. I'm going to give you the names and phone numbers and emails of the prime contractors. I'm going to teach you what to say and how to say it when you call them. We're going to build your cap statement so you have something to email them. But I can't pick up the phone and dial it for you. You know, I just need to know that you'll have time to invest in making phone calls and submitting bids, so that I know that you guys will be successful. You know, this isn't a get-rich-quick scheme. I get some people that call me up and say, "Hey, man, I saw that War Dogs movie. I want to do that. Can I do that?" Yeah, but it's not a get-rich-quick scheme. You got to work it. You got to make those calls and submit those bids.
Right. John, I have another question. You bring one up. What would be, since me and I are just starting off, and again, I don't want to bite too big of a chunk in our beginning stages. Is there a number of contracts we should be careful on bidding on?
Not really. I mean, I tell people to grow respectively and don't bite off more than they can chew, but there's so many companies out there these days that'll finance contracts, and there's so many different ways to sub portions of that work out to good subcontractors that are going to do a good job. So I would just say don't take on too many at once. That's really the only downfall. If you take on too many projects at once and can't dedicate the kind of time to each project that you need to, that could be a problem.
Okay.
But I have clients that do one or two contracts at a time, and I have clients that do hundreds of contracts at a time. Hell, Wells Fargo Bank is one of my clients. And Wells Fargo Bank, they have a team of attorneys, hundreds of attorneys. The only reason why they're my client, and I love the way it was Stuart Goodpastures, the senior vice president of Wells Fargo. He's retired, and Dave Ryder took over now. But when he originally hired me, the way he explained it is this. He said, "John Wayne, when I have a question and I go to my attorneys, they take a week to give me an answer because they're too busy covering their own butts. They're worried about telling me something and giving me wrong information and getting in trouble." And he says, it's like pulling teeth getting an answer out of these guys. But when I call you and I need an answer, you give me an answer in 5 minutes. That's why you're on our payroll. That's why you're on my Rolodex, is because I need you. When I need you now, not tomorrow, not a week from now, you know?
Right. Understand.
They've been a client since 2010. In 5 years, they've only called me twice. But no, not complaining.
Right. Exactly.